All right, guys, I got you out here next to a beautiful basket that you can't see right now because Dakota's framing me in frame. Because I'm gonna give you 3 putting tips. These putting tips have saved my putting. They're the things that I think about every time I come out and putt, and I'm gonna share them with you. Drop. All right, guys, probably these tips are not gonna be new for many of you. And I'll admit that I learned it somewhere along the way. Don't know who from, but all I know is you gotta paint the line. So actually I learned this from Josh in our first putting video. So extremely important, no matter where you take your disc back, you need to paint a line. Let's say you're the basket, and I'm gonna paint a line with my hand from you, the basket, all the way into my pullback, and then all the way out through my follow through. This is for sure the most important thing you can do with putting, and something that people don't realize, that this is actually difficult. Some people trying to be painting lines and they're like, all right, painting lines here, here, like that, you didn't do it right. This is like, think about it as like a Mario Party mini game, all right? Keep your hand on that line from the basket all the way to your putter, and you draw that thing back, and you follow on that same line all the way through. Let me demonstrate. All right, let me show that in action. All I'm gonna be thinking about is keeping my hand on line. And you know what? I'm gonna take away anything wrist right now. I'm just gonna keep my arm pretty straight, and all I'm thinking about is draw back down the line, follow through down the line. And let's see what I can do. Paint the line. I'm gonna do a couple paint lines before I let go. Draw it back. Draw it back. Hardly any wrist there. I'm just using my arm to create the line, which brings us into our next tip. What does the wrist do? All right, here's where things go pretty horribly for most people, is adding wrist. Do I add wrist? Do I subtract wrist? What do I do with the wrist? How do I keep that same line I just created with my arm and then add another lever here? For me, it comes down to being very, very loose. So I like to think about starting with the neutral wrist. Loose, neutral wrist. And when I bring the disc in, I'm keeping it neutral. Now, as I propel my arm forward, my wrist is loose. So naturally, as I move my arm forward, my wrist is gonna come back a little bit. I'm not forcing this. This is happening because my wrist is loose. So wrist is loose, I've got a loose grip. My arm is pretty loose, so my arm goes back, painting the line, and then as my arm comes forward, I get just a little bit of wrist curl here. I go from here to here just because my arm is moving forwards. So let's add that in as a second step. All right, so I'm gonna do this kind of in a slow motion fashion. I'm not gonna be moving my arm too fast, producing more wrist lag. I'm just gonna be nice and easy with it. You should see that my wrist kind of breaks in a little bit, and that's good. Paint the line. I was able to add spin to my putt simply by keeping my wrist loose. So we went from basically no spin to we've added spin, but this is important. I'm not forcing my wrist forward. As soon as you start forcing your wrist forward, you're gonna find that you're gonna start missing right, or it's gonna be harder to time. This is why I really like the loose wrist concept. Is it's natural. Your wrist will bounce back as you release to neutral. So you start neutral, you pull it back, your arm moves forward, your wrist lags a little bit, and then your wrist goes back to neutral. It's incredible. If you've never felt it before, I'm excited for you to try and feel it. And hopefully some of you do. It's a difficult one to do, but really starts with the grip pressure. Don't be gripping the heck out of this disc, which we like to do when we get nervous. Ever wonder why you're really good at putting when you're practicing and then you go out and you got nerves and you're like, I gotta make this, shank it right, or maybe you release it too early, goes left. Stay loose, take a deep breath, loose wrist. This is good. I'm proud of myself. All right, so the second tip kind of covers the third tip, but I just wanna exaggerate that you need to finish with a shake hands grip. So I told you that if you add wrist, it's easy to shank right. Look at this wrist position here. This is a farther than neutral wrist position right here. We get into that position by trying to flick our wrist out. This can produce some of the worst misses in disc golf in history. For example, I added wrist and ended here. So the third tip is, it's finished with a neutral shake hands grip towards the basket. Something cool with this tip, ending with the shake hands grip, is you can actually mess a couple of these first steps up and still get a nice straight putt. Specifically that second step where I was talking about keeping loose. If you're not loose, but you end with a shake hands grip, it can be all right for you. You can still make putts. I'm purposely gonna be pretty tight here and try to simulate a little bit of pressure. Like, hey, I'm only gonna get one chance at this putt. I'm gonna make sure I finish shake hands grip, neutral wrist at the basket here. Now I'm pretty close, I shouldn't miss this, but also high pressure. Very tight, very straight, shake hands grip. My bonus tip, I call this one drawing the bow. This is something Josh taught me for longer putts. I definitely use it for longer putts, but I also found myself using it for shorter putts. And that's the idea that when my wrist breaks in a little bit, I like to think about my two fingers here as a bow. I go from here, and then I wanna draw my two fingers back down the target line. So notice, if my line is the camera, I've got my fingers directly back of that target line, and I'm loose, and then my wrist pops forward from there. This adds more spin, helps me generate more speed, and sometimes I just use it to help really nail down my line. This is what that looks like. It's gonna be a little bit faster and hopefully more spin. These are all first takes, by the way. I am like only 10 feet away, but am I bragging right now? All right, so that's the idea of drawing the bow. Remember, it's these two fingers here. They start neutral, perpendicular to the target, and as my wrist drops back and I start to move forward, I'm obviously showing the plate so you guys can see it. I let my two fingers drop directly back of the target, and then loose wrist should finish with a neutral wrist to the target. It's literally all the putting tips I tell myself right there. All right, Dakota, let's get a slow-mo of all those tips combined, and hopefully you guys can see each individual element that we discussed today. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Really hope this video helped you. Putting is something I've gotten very comfortable with, and I feel like I'm really good at this point in disc golf. And it's something I really struggled through when I first got into it. So if I could go back and tell myself 3 tips with a bonus tip, these would be the 4 things I would tell myself. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace out.